not ignoring you. I have to reply back. I've had a lot going on between our session today. So you are like highlighted and flagged for my people to get back to today.
Thank you, Christy. I would slap you on your hand. I'm kidding.
Yeah, no, like
I forgot, honestly.
I'm up to here. I'm trying to play games for next week. So I'm sorry.
Yeah, for a couple of days I don't know what day it is, and I'm in the same situation. So the only time I actually get things done that I'm working on, like project-wise, is Sunday, because the rest of the week is just crazy.
Yeah, my daughter's on having it.
Hey guys, hang on. Awesome connection. Great to bring everybody together. Thank you so much for coming and joining and being part of this. We are Breakout Room number 2 today. So as Jay just mentioned, we're gonna dig into these couple topics, which were kind of front and center from the community and from prior asking questions that were asked for previous calls. If there's deviations on these, that's okay. The goal is to, help everybody understand like what's going on inside your world with regards to these areas. And we're going to do that in 2 different ways. The first is we're going to talk about the topic from the challenge perspective. So when we go in and talk about the amount of ARR per CSM and the allocation of number of accounts per CSM, we want to first bring to the surface what are some of the challenges that you face when doing this, or if you have done this in the past. So before we get to the solution of how you solved all this, let's talk about the challenges, because sometimes challenges are honestly easier for everybody to identify with than the solution. So the solution can sound great, but if it doesn't align with your challenge, sometimes there can be a miss, and we want to make sure that whatever solutions you do here, and we do want to get to those, are aligned to a challenge, and you can frankly pick that pretty quickly. So we'll do that in 2 ways. We'll work through the first one on the CSM allocation side and capacity side, and if we have time, we'll go into the onboarding piece. I wanted to do a quick check, if I could. If you guys click on the participants little thing in the bottom of the Zoom window, do you see any hand raising icons or any icons at all?
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Okay. Yeah. Okay, raise a hand. Okay, cool. So here's one way to make this more efficient, because we've got a good number of people in the room, is that if you have a comment or would like to speak, stay on mute, raise your hand through that little hand icon. I see a bunch of them, Ziv, Christy, Kathleen, I see your hands raised. That's awesome. So this will make it a little bit easier to make sure we don't talk over each other, and we can go on each person. And then when I just call your name, just go off mute. You can take the hand off, and then we'll talk and have our discussion, and then we'll move on to the next person. Any questions about that? So everybody clear your hands. And if you have a question about that, raise your hand. All right. Ziv, are you good? Or do you have a question?
I'm sleeping.
Okay.
Hi, Ziv.
And Jeff, if you could go on mute, or I'll put you on mute. Okay, cool. So first up is our CSM capacity topic, right? And again, this is all about trying to figure out how much ARR and how many accounts to assign each CSM within your team. So would love to hear first about the challenges that you face. Why is this difficult? What are some of the nuances that you deal with that maybe others are dealing with too? Kathleen, would you take yourself off mute and come on and share with us what you're
Yeah, awesome. And thanks for having me. I think I've worked on both. I worked at Shutterstock as an enterprise account manager, but I also worked in the early stage startup. So I'm going to give a very diplomatic answer in that it really depends. Sometimes it's just a matter of how much resources can you allocate to that team from a salary perspective. Unfortunately, the CSM role is not really valued that much kind of industry-wide, in my opinion. I'm based in New York City, so in the tech industry. So this is what I'm experiencing. I can imagine what it's like in other markets as well that aren't, at that level in terms of population. But I think when it comes to ARR, if we think about that, that's the wrong way to think about it. I think it's important to if you're able to differentiate and put things into groups, it should probably be based. It really depends on how high touch or low touch your service is. If it's very low touch, it doesn't matter. And you may not even necessarily, you might want to just create subject matter experts.
Kathleen, hang on 1 sec. Okay, so we're getting a little bit into the solution piece, which is going to be fantastic. And I want to hear all about that. I want to hear about
Just
prior to getting to the solution.
Oh.
What was the
Okay.
why was it
Yeah.
hard?
Some of the challenges.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you for clarifying that question.
Absolutely.
I think there's a lot. It really depends on the stage of the company. Sometimes it's just that you have hundreds and hundreds of accounts and no idea what the hell to do. But then other times, like, it's just a matter of like prices change literally every couple of months. That happened to me at the startup that I was working. Sometimes you may not have enough money. Sometimes you don't really, it's not really breaking out in a fair way. And also like trying to figure out, how do we structure this so there's sort of an opportunity for people to advance? Like, there's so many considerations, but there's just some of the challenges I've noticed.
Awesome. Okay, so making sure things are fair, making sure there's an opportunity for everybody, and making sure that there's everybody can advance. Awesome. Thank you, Kathleen. Ziv, let's go to you next. And Kathleen, you can drop your hand. Just click that hand icon. It'll go away. Ziv, let's go to you next and take yourself off mute. Tell us about the challenges that you face when it comes to figuring out how much ARR per CSM or number of accounts should be handled.
Cool. So when I started to look at this question, I get this question a lot and all the time, and so I really drilled down to understand the challenge. And the challenge here is that we have many customers, and there's so many jobs to be done with those customers in different stages. So I think that looking at that question, how much ARR or how many accounts, is not the right answer, and you need to go to a lower level. And the lower level is how many significant relationships I need to create relationships with, build relationships with, and in the end, how many of those, how many different jobs to be done I need to do with them. And I think that by that, we hired, I'm running CS in AppsFlyer for almost 7 years now. When we started and we hired with the first customer success managers, and we used common sense. We asked CSMs to use common sense. And when you scale, then common sense is not good enough. Then you start to build practices. And I think that for the last year, we are working very, very hard to establish that significant relationships, how many significant relationships came from the Dunbar number and stuff. And I think it's definitely much better than just looking at ARR and number of accounts.
Got it. Ziv, thank you. So, looking instead of the number of accounts, it's about more the challenge is defining the relationship, if I heard you correctly. And how many of those relationships inside of your customer accounts are you going to actually have to build? And how much effort is it going to take to do that, as quantified by jobs to be done, for example? Because once you get to a scale point, then just simply doing the one-off things via common sense isn't going to work. Thank you for sharing your insights there, Ziv. Rika, let's go to you. Take yourself off mute and let us know about the challenges that you're facing and have faced in the past with regards to ARR or accounts by CSM.
Yeah, great. So just a quick, this is my first time joining the group, and from first impressions, it seems awesome. I'm really looking forward to hearing more about, what you guys do and engage with this group. It's very impressive. So different challenges, I think. I was leading and establishing in teams in very technical product as a SaaS software company. So some of the challenges for us were the time zones. We were global, and we had customers from different parts of the world. And the CS role was not just upselling once in a quarter, once in a year engagement. They were really part of the customer experience. So we had to have very frequent contacts, and so time zones was one challenge for me. The second one that was important was we had different offerings. And so we had the low-end product that's more out of the box for customers who just wanted a simple solution, a low budget. And then we had more complicated products, very engaged customers really looking at the product as a strategic differentiator. And so the technical expertise and the knowledge and skills of the person that they assigned was really key for me. So these two were very important.
Thank you, Rika. That's awesome. So time zones, that's incredible. I mean, some of you probably serve customers all over the world like Rika does. Anybody ever struggle with that? Raise your physical hand here, just as a show of that. Yeah, me too. And then the different offerings that you have, right? The lower end versus the higher end. That's fantastic. Thank you so much. All right, so it's all one word. The next person, trip to doobie. Are you? Is that?
Yeah, you got that right.
Is that your first name?
Okay, that's my first and last name. So my name is Tripti, and the last name is Dubey. I don't know why it's coming up together, but
Okay,
definitely
cool.
Tripti is the first name.
Awesome.
Well, thank you. Thank you for giving me this stage. It's my first time joining this call. I am very excited.
Welcome.
Everybody, it's a pleasure to meet you all. I recently did this exercise. So I'm part of the Sprinklers Bangalore office CSM team, although I'm just a customer success manager, but I do help out in terms of hiring and understanding how things should work. So we recently did this exercise to understand how many CSMs are required for the amount of book of business that our team handles from here. So there were two strategies, right? One was top down to understand what the company's strategy is for the CSMs, and then bottom up to fit all the activities that they do to come to the number of hours that they will be spending on any given account, and then arrive at the total number of accounts that every CSM should be handling, and in turn giving us a number of total accounts, right? But my issue was when we have these activities that different CSMs do for different accounts, we don't know how to quantify them when it comes to the time itself. You don't know how much time are you going to spend in analyzing the value, first of all, what you are going to deliver to the customer, and then how much time are you going to spend in making the customer understand that what the value was. So quantifying this in terms of time, because that is what CSMs are spending, I think is one of the biggest challenge. And now I have seen it from my own personal experience. Sorry to take a minute there, but some of my smaller customers demand a lot more than some bigger customers do. So I do not know how to associate that time with an ARR itself. So I think that is one of the biggest challenges that any CSM leader would face.
Love it. Yeah, Tripti, you're 100% right. Quantifying the time of activities. I mean, that first and foremost, yeah, I've experienced that myself as well. And how do you quantify the amount of time put into certain functions, whether it's the onboarding, the kickoff, a business review, figuring out how to build the account plan. That is a significant challenge. And we're going to get to the solutioning part of this in a few minutes here, but we'll take a couple more on the challenges front. So we've hit some really great ones around time zone and quantifying the time of activities, and we will hit Jaren. My man, Jaren, how are you? Come off of mute. And Rika, if you could also drop your hand from the little selector thing, that'd be great. Thank you. Jaren, go ahead.
Hi, Niels. How are you?
I'm doing great, man. Good to see you.
Touchdown, made it into the right channel. I was hoping I would get into this one with you.
Right on.
I'll just be really short. One of the biggest challenges that everyone faces is reassigning relationships that have been built between a CSM and a customer when you're having to scale the organization. That's a big challenge. Always has been, always will be.
Awesome. Agree 100%. No doubt. Thank you. All right, Shane, come off of mute and let us know what the challenges you've faced are.
Hi guys, also first time here. I'll also try to keep it brief. Breadth and complexity of the product. How many modules, how much education they need. The investment we have in onboarding is a good sign of that. The customer itself, small or large, the number of people, as it was touching on that, not only relationship wise, but the number of people that you could get on board. Product maturity is another. From our side, maturity and skill of the industry and the customer is another. Even your team, that was also mentioned. You've hired, maybe you hired heavy on industry knowledge, maybe not. Maybe you've hired technical skills, maybe not. But their abilities definitely play into how many customers they'd be able to serve at scale. And even your product, your pricing, upsell, cross-sell. In my past, I had, if they were smaller, but a large portion of them didn't have this module that we could sell, then that can be a segment. So it doesn't necessarily have to be on ARR, but what are we trying to achieve with them, and then divide it up accordingly.
Love it. Shane, thank you so much. That you hit the nail and kind of summarized so many of the points that we've hit so far. And as you can see, there's no one easy answer. I mean, this question has been around since the beginning of CS period. There's no one perfect answer. There's going to be a great application for you, which I want to get to here. Maybe we'll do one more. Dave Epperly, would you mind taking yourself off mute and coming on and tell us about your challenges?
Hey, Niels. Hey, thanks for letting me chime in here. Specifically, first off, I'll echo what Shane just mentioned in terms of maturity. We really look at it as a cybersecurity offering at customer maturity, and matching the right people with the right customer is quite a challenge on the maturity side. But other than that, one of the big wrinkles that we have experienced over the last year or so is working through partners, almost finding the right mix of CSM load with each specific partner that we're working with, because each of those partner sets demand a different kind of relationship with them, and then through to the end customer as well. So it adds another complexity level to everything. Thank you.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you for sharing. The partner world opens up a whole new can of worms on that front. Absolutely. All right, so let's shift gears now, and raise your physical hand if you heard something from somebody else that you also have struggled with when it comes to figuring out the ARR per CSM. Yeah, right. And it feels good to know that you're not alone, right? Know that 100%, myself included, having been in the seat and having been consultant for the last 5+ years, you are not alone. This is a common challenge. These are struggles that every single CS leader faces, period. And that's why the collective group here is going to help shed some light on how to take a step, maybe refine what you have, build it if you don't have it. There's no wrong answer here. So would love to get to the solutioning part. Thank you all for dropping the hands here. And if you want to talk about how you have addressed this in ways maybe that have been creative, or things that you have done just to address this in your situation. And if you could start with your engagement model, just give us a sense for, are you an early stage company, like Jay was saying, less than 20 million? Are you above 20 million? That's a pretty simple delineation. We'll just say that. You don't have to give specifics. And then 2, is your engagement model high touch, medium, low touch? And I know you have different segments and things, so just pick one of them and share with us how you have solved this, how you've addressed this, and then we'll get some tips, ideas, some tricks, things you can take into your own world. All right, Kathleen, hit us.
Awesome. So I'm currently a consultant, and I just founded a record label. But anyway, for me, it is going to be very dependent on the stage. Like when I was at Shutterstock, that's a global organization. When I started, there were only 10 AMs. And we had so much work. I had to work 12 hours a day, literally 7 days a week, to even get through it all, because it was very, very high touch, because we work with large advertising agencies in New York City who have high expectations. Imagine that. But then for like the small company I worked for, this early stage startup, eventually, I think the model that would have made sense, because it could be high touch if for like the bigger customers, but there were different tiers. It was SaaS model. But they tried to make it so that the kind of I came on as like the junior AM, which was laughable because of my experience, whatever, it happens. But giving kind of like the smaller accounts to people who are just starting out, and then as they mature and show that they can handle and take on more and more, then they get the higher touch accounts. Eventually, maybe they are added as kind of like an ally, or like someone to like a helper for some of these bigger accounts, so that they can get the experience, so they can eventually, I think that actually makes sense, like from a easy transition, because when someone mentioned like one of the hardest things is transferring that relationship, I agree 100%. And people, I've seen it done so poorly in my last job that actually folded. They just did not handle, accounts were moving left and right, and that just creates an insecurity with your customers, which when we're focused on retention, which is, the main job of the CSM and function, obviously we do a million and other one things, but yeah. I think it's just so important to, do that. So
yeah, awesome. Thank you so much. That Shutterstock piece, I mean, you're talking global organization, and at the beginning was a small team to get everything done. So the balance of those, a number of ARR or amount of ARR, number of accounts, probably a little out of whack. Katie, would you mind coming off mute and sharing with us how you've addressed this in your world, and what your world looks like from a ARR and disengagement perspective?
Hello, everybody. Sure. So I think for us, and I'll address who us is here in a second, it was really investing in the right tool to be able to deploy at scale different types of solutions when it came to a tech touch, hybrid touch, and high touch approach to our customers. I work for Monster.com, aka Monster Worldwide. No, it is not the energy drink or the cable company. We've been in business for 25 years. I have been fortunate enough to be with the organization for 19 of those. So I would call us a mature organization that is in a very competitive spot. And, you know, at the time that we were looking to invest in a tool, I was looking to be able to put some type of structure around, 50,000 customers. And all of those customers were in a different, maturity level themselves at how they were wanting to go after finding talent. And so for us, that tool allowed us to really figure out the thresholds for our customer success engagement. Who did we want to do a strong tech touch approach to versus where, a customer would fit when it came to the white glove treatment. It helped us address many bandwidth issues, right? Because we only have so much that we're investing in the customer success team and so many dollars to invest in that. And so, fundamentally that helped us to be able to scale and ensure we were getting our customers, from onboarding to renewal in a much more efficient fashion.
Thank you, Katie. That's the scale of Monster and even just thinking about 50,000 customers. Can you clarify one thing? When you said a tool, were you talking about something specific to CS, some
Yes.
other tool? What was it?
No. So we function in having a CRM. We use Salesforce. We have a marketing automation tool, and we really needed a tool that was going to be able to manage that customer lifecycle. So it was a tool that was customer success specific and was able to address everything from marketing automation at scale to success plays at scale. So everybody was marching to the same order, right? When it came to what we wanted to address in onboarding and the process of getting the customer to the driving adoption stage. So hope that answers your question.
Love it. Yes. Thank you for clarifying. That's fantastic. All right. So I'm going to call on a couple of people who haven't had a chance to speak yet. Thank you for raising your hands, but want to make sure we hear a variety of different perspectives. So Jennifer Dole, would you come off of mute and help us understand how you've addressed this and what type of environment do you operate in?
All right, so surprise call on. Okay, so I have been with over 20 million at Cornerstone On Demand, which had all functionality of tech touch, low touch, high touch. And I'm currently with Fuel 50, which is less than 20 million, and kind of exploring all of the above. I think in terms of how we addressed it, time zone definitely played into supporting your clients as well as their business outcomes. So we tried to have, the same CSM that was supporting business outcome X really become more experienced with that, have those best practice stories to share based on just the conversations that they were having. So we had enough clients in the bigger company to afford us the opportunity, and there were 70 CSMs at that point. At the startup now, we still use time zone, but we've got tech touch, low touch, high touch in our portfolio. And so this conversation is really meaningful to me. So awesome. Thanks for hosting it, and hope that helps.
Yeah, thank you. Jennifer, one clarifying question there on just the high touch in your current environment. Outside of time zone, what other dimensions have you looked at to say that, in our high touch model, one CSM should be able to handle 5 accounts or 10 accounts or 20 accounts, whatever it is? What are some of the other dimensions that you've looked at outside of time zone, just for that high touch piece?
And in the smaller company?
Yeah.
So I'm like 4 weeks in.
Oh, okay, cool. All right, then no worries. We can punt till later. I'm
learning.
All good. Hey, Fantastic. Congrats on joining the new company.
Thank you.
All right, cool. Vijay, Vijay, how do you pronounce that?
Yeah, Vijay,
Okay.
you got it. Yeah,
Okay,
no problem.
cool.
So,
Vijay, help us. Hit us.
Thank you. So, I'm actually in transition, and I work for a company called Citrix, and so the CS practice at Citrix started like 3 years ago, and as a program manager for priority tech support, I kind of got to be involved with that. So this was one of the first challenges that I faced on how do you manage productivity. So what we did was we took some of the learnings we had from the tech support world and tried to apply it to the CS world. So we started off with like 5 CSMs, and we made a very clear call. The high touch we would not measure. We would just assign 1 or 2 per account, but we would go to the low touch first and look at how we want to handle that. So a simple Excel sheet based approach. So we try to define something called as a work unit depending upon the amount of time a CSM spends with a mid-tier customer or with a customer below an annual spend of like say $50,000 or something like that. So what I mean by that is one call, a QBR, and maybe 2 check-ins, something like that. Define that and call that as a work unit, and then take your best performing CSM and find out how many work units they need to put in to meet their goals, to meet their numbers or their measures, and look at the median guy and the worst guy or the person who is performing the least. And we came up with a very raw measure, but then we try to marry that with how tech support measures in terms of tickets closed and first call closures. We try to do something like that, and that helped us to kind of get started with the low touch customers.
That's fantastic, Vijay. I love the analytical and data-driven approach to quantifying it down to a specific work unit. And I first in designing what the work unit really is, thinking about what the outcome is that you have to get the customer to anyways, and then how to back into it, testing that with your best, highest performing and lowest performing, and coming up with a range in the middle. Nice work. That's awesome. All right, Melissa. Would you come off of mute and share with us a little bit about your environment and some of the things that you've done to help address this challenge?
Sure. So in one of my previous roles, we had a very large team of CSMs.
Hey, Melissa, your volume's a little low. Can you hold your microphone a little bit closer?
Sorry, is that a little better?
Yes, much better.
Okay. Sorry, I have birds, so sometimes they like to chime in too.
Okay.
At one of my previous roles, we had 36 CSMs, and one thing I can tell you is a not to do is to align your CSMs purely based on an alignment and a partnering with a field sales rep. Some reps are much stronger and have larger client bases to work from. Others not so much, so you get a lot of disparity. And I saw, like for myself, I had over 300 accounts, which is dang near impossible in a mid to high touch type environment to successfully manage. It's insane, where somebody else only has 75 customers. So it makes for a lot of animosity amongst the reps and can very negatively affect morale. Wow. So a very big what not to do.
That's really interesting. And thank you, Melissa. And that might be an interesting jumping off point for the last about 10 minutes that we have here is let's talk about the biggest not to do's. Melissa just shared one gigantic one there that can help you sidestep a landmine. What are some other not to do's, the things that you've tried that have failed, that have blown up in your face, whatever it is? Let us hear. Okay, so is it IDO? David? Yeah.
Yes, sir. It's Ido.
Ido.
Hi, everybody.
Apologies.
Yes, sir.
Awesome.
Hi, Niels. Hi, everybody. Ido from Israel. Thanks for calling out on me. I was actually raising my hand for the last one.
Go ahead.
I can just I'll throw in one last point in there. Something that I found very valuable. Now I'm in a startup. slow growing very quickly, and I came from a medium to high touch $20 million company. We used the sales team's pipeline in order to identify how many CSMs we need. Onboarding is a very big part of the role of a CSM in both of these organizations. So understanding how many ongoing projects, onboarding projects are happening at the same time was a key factor in determining how much staff we need. Does that make sense?
Yes, absolutely. How about one lesson learned of anything along this line, something that you tried, didn't work, and it was just like disaster, if you have one?
So since we're not based in the States and a good portion of our clients are, time zones was a big one.
Time zones. Don't mess up the time zones.
No, don't screw around with that. It changes people's motivation and their working hours. It's a little crazy. So I was actually there when we opened an office in Toronto and started shifting the business over.
Got it. Okay, cool. Awesome. Thank you so much, Ido.
Thanks
so
again.
Time zone, coming in, that one is like a irrefutable, not movable thing in the world. So who else has a what not to do, a thing not to do, something that you've experimented with? We heard from Melissa, we heard from Ido. Who else has one? Raise your hand. Rika, do you have one on this topic?
Yeah, I do. I actually think it's important lesson. It was for me anyway. Because of actually an M&A transaction, we did 2 acquisitions at the time that I was leading the team. And the target company that we acquired was actually in exactly the same space. So we were a very good fit on the business level and getting the customers. What was the challenge was they had very different approach to customer service and the way they were doing it. So our company was very tech-oriented, solutions, not hands-on. I won't do one-off fix for you. And that other company was a much smaller, and they were just doing tasks that really we had automated in the system. And so the challenge was on both fronts, both dealing with the customers who now they had to adapt, and you also had the CSMs that you don't want to unplug them out because they have the relationship, but they're used in working in a different model. So the lesson for me there was do not just go back and let them do business as usual. You really have to have your vision and your plan on how you need to operate as a company. So just don't give in. The how you do it and how you get there is not overnight, of course. You have to develop your plans and slowly move that. So it was done in a tactful way, but it takes a bit, and you just need to make sure you have a clear vision and direction that you're going. So don't give in.
Love it, Rika. Thank you. Clear vision and plan. Don't go, if you are in an M&A situation, if you're combining 2 different cultures, 2 different operating modes, 2 different CS functions, don't go back to business as usual. Gotta bring them together. Love that, Rika. Jaren, did you have one on what not to do, a lesson learned from something you've seen or worked with one of your clients on? What do you got?
Yeah, actually a couple of things, past experience. Number 1, don't make the mistake of simply thinking that you can divide your teams by account numbers and the able or experienced CSMs that you have. Don't just simply say, oh, they can probably handle 25, they can probably handle about 15. Don't make the mistake of trying to simplify it that way. Number 2, don't make the mistake of assuming that your best, most experienced CSMs are going to be the best to handle your highest strategic accounts, and your least experienced CSMs to manage the largest book of business at your light touch accounts. Mm-hmm. You need to evaluate the strengths of each one of your CSMs, and it may be that your strongest CSM is the best at managing a strategy for a light touch across your largest logo count, and yet it may be the lowest dollar account, which more often than not, you have the most opportunity for expansion.
Jaren, awesome points. And that speaks to the heart of, there is no one perfect model that exists, right? And within each team, there are a different set of strengths. And within each team, you have a different set of needs that you got to accomplish with the customer. And the single most important thing is exactly what you said. Align the strengths to the results that are needed. Fantastic. Thank you so much. Hey, Christy, we haven't heard from you yet. Would you mind sharing? I know you've been through this game a million times. What's one thing or two things that that everybody, the folks, would love to know, and what not to do in this area?
Yeah, so I tried to not dominate this conversation, as I feel like I had maybe a couple weeks over, so I've been silent to let everyone else contribute. But yeah, so for us, I've obviously done this at 4 different companies and restructured it several times. I would say the biggest not to do is kind of treating all customers the same, and even within segments, saying that this is a model that's going to be applicable. What I've given to my team is a recommended engagement plan and model, and that's how we've built all of our capacity modeling around that. So when we figured out what model looked like, it was a recommended one, but we had to build in flexibility. So I would say, don't be rigid. Don't hold to a model that just because it seemed to work well, that is the only way to structure it. You've got to have the ability to be agile in that regard. So if you're not going to be flexible, whatever model you put in place, it's not going to work. Every customer is different. And while you want to have something that addresses 80% of the situations that you've got crafted, you need to be, as a leader, to be able to lean in and say, this actually isn't going to work for this cohort or this select number of customers, or because of this resource that I've got allocated to it. So just being thoughtful in that regard, I would say, is the biggest learning that I've had. And so when I do all of my leverage ratios and kind of modeling there, it's based on a top-down, bottom-up model, which is based on what we're trying to achieve with these customers within different segments. Our segmentation is very sophisticated. It has nothing to do with how much they're spending today, because I don't care what they're spending today. The goal is to get them to grow the partnership over time. And so really leaning into what our core objectives are from a function, and then structuring something that's going to make sense. But yeah, for me, it's all about the agility and being flexible. And I have found that doing that has always yielded more upside than not.
Love it. Love it. Thank you so much, Christy.
Yep.
They hit that point, like address 80% of the situations. You're never going to get 100%. And also
Never.
love what you said
Nope,
there.
never.
No. It's just not going to happen. And also love what you said there about, you don't care how much they're spending. The goal is to get them to specific milestones so that they ultimately spend more. And that kind of turns a lot of the conventional wisdom thinking on its head. So thank you so much for sharing.
Yeah, you got it. Thank you.
Awesome. All right, Scott Hopper, would you come off of mute and share a lesson learned from your experience? Scott, are you there? You're still on mute if you are.
There it goes.
There you go.
Thank you. So I guess one of the things, this is somewhat related to, more complex accounts. I come from a background at IBM where I was working on the Notes Domino product. And, we had some relationships with companies like CSC where we had an individual that might be in charge of them from a CSM standpoint for each customer that they maintained. And then one that kind of overlooked kind of the whole account in general. I guess the one thing that you got to look out for in those situations is really it's what's happening at the top that matters in some sense, because as a company, they may move all at once away from all their customers.
Mm-hmm.
They may choose to migrate their customers off the platform when you're in a competitive environment.
Awesome.
And so that really affects your personnel. You might not lose just one person, you might lose 5 people.
Yeah, absolutely. And inside of thanks for the perspective on the IBM of the world. I mean, that is a significantly large, global worldwide organization with some very, very, very large accounts. Gretchen, would you, haven't heard from you yet. Would you, yes, I know, I love seeing the eyes light up when I call people's names, so apologies in advance, but would love to hear it from your perspective, a lesson learned, a tip, a trick, whatever you got, hit us.
Sure. I'll preface this with the fact that I'm a very limited customer success expert. I had one role where that was my title. I've had a lot of roles where I feel like I've played a portion of that job. But the company that I worked for when I was leading customer success had been a professional services organization that was trying to migrate their internal platform to be a client-facing platform.
Okay.
And I was charged with figuring out how to do that. My biggest challenge was honestly that I had a very small team. We had a huge user base, and the biggest lesson learned was I was trying to be very analytical about it all, and I wasn't considering the skill set of each of my individual CSMs. And I had like two that always stick out to me. One was very analytical and very much like me, and one was very soft skills. She came from a psychology background, and I ended up using them as kind of my basis of how to think about things in a smarter way moving forward, because they couldn't handle the same volume. They couldn't handle the same types of clients. And so I kind of had to have definitions of my personality types. And that was the biggest lesson learned for me.
That's fantastic. Thank you. And hey, regardless of time, you were in the role, you were in the seat, you're one of this community here. So thank you so much for contributing and sharing. And your point is duly noted, and along the lines of what Jaren was sharing with us earlier about the strengths of each individual. And, you know, as a leader, right, the strengths that we have are different than those of our team. And using a strengths-based approach to leadership, like you were saying there, to identify the gaps, fill it up, like Christy said, address 80% of the situations, right? Those are the things that are going to make a difference, and those are things that are going to help you. Cool. We've got about 5 minutes left. I want to, at this point, take a brief pause and just remind you that when we go back into the main session, Jeff and Jay will call on random individuals and just ask for number one takeaway that you learned from today, and number two, what is one thing you can put into action, whether it's, you know, making sure that your model does not incorporate one of these lessons learned or not to do's, or maybe it was an idea on how to do this that you could take and put into place right away. Whatever it is, like the goal of these is not just to be a great place to share and invent and talk about these topics, but also to put things into action that you can learn from other people. So with that in mind, keep that in there. All right, so let's go to Laura. Laura, you haven't had a chance to speak yet. Would love to hear from you on a tip, a trick, something not to do, something you learned. Share.
So yeah, absolutely. Hi, everyone. The biggest thing, I'm in a stage where 20 people in growth. So we're a robotics company, so we're doing hardware and software. So the biggest takeaway, I'm in the middle of it, I have a team of 5 CSMs, is that my biggest thing is information and getting sales and really pushing them to provide us with the best information so we can assign the right people. That's actually my biggest challenge right now, is that if they throw over a client quick sale and there's nothing in the CRM, it's very difficult to assign someone. So this is basic level, but because we're in the early stages, it's a fun problem to solve. We're small enough that we should be able to solve it. So that's really the stage I'm at. Is I love the points that everyone's making about assigning the right person based on their strengths. And I'm trying to figure out how now really to scale that, because I don't think this is scalable to be A, trying to get information from sales, but also B, trying to personality match with that customer data. And so that's my, I think, big next step, is to figure out how do you take this model, and if you get to thousands of customers, and that's our goal, how do we manage that?
Great questions. And at your point in time, I'm sure virtually everybody on this call has been there at some point where you get a deal that comes through and there's a little sparse on the background and information, and you ask why did they buy? And they're like, they bought. Like, isn't that all that matters? Right? I'm sure there are many of you, myself included, who can align with that. So you are not alone 100%. And so there's always this question of, do we focus on the immediate task that we have today, or do we focus on building something that will scale to thousands of customers in the future, right? And there's no perfect black and white answer, but the reality is you have to deal with where you're at today. Like that's a no-brainer, right? And over time, know that you are going to make changes and you are going to evolve. And once you get this model nailed once, that doesn't mean it's the end of the model. It just is it's just the best summation of based on the information that you have available at this time. Then in 6 months, when you have a whole new flood of customers that are much greater than before, you have a new set of information that you have to deal with, and you can adjust and refine. So one thing I just encourage you to do is not stress too much about the scaling in the future, and know that as you build this, you're going to learn a tremendous amount more in the next 6 months than you have information available at this time, and it's going to influence that. So every step of the way, you're going to be getting closer. And when you hit a, a true hockey stick curve, that's a different story, but where you're at right now is a great place, and just focus on solving those problems today.
Yeah, the final tip I'd say is that I've trained our team to be really strong in the onboarding, so that anything that we're missing data-wise, we're capturing.
Cool. Awesome. Love it. All right. So as you see, you can return to the main session here. We will do that. So everybody just click that little blue button, and I'll see you in just a minute on the other side.